The houseagain infuser has 3 parts. It has a black silicone lid that can be used to keep the heat into your tea while it's brewing. It has a fine mesh screen. In fact, when I opened the box, took this out of the box and I looked at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a screen? It's so fine. I had to look through it and make sure, oh my gosh, can I actually see through this thing? And let me see if I can show you. I'm not sure how well this will show up, but yes, you can see through it. It's just really, really fine. And then it has a silicone thing, I guess I'd call this a sleeve up at the top. And this is actually removable, so if you didn't want the silicone at all, you could conceivably take it off. The only trouble with that is then you wouldn't have much of anything to hold on to except the bare stainless steel, which could get quite hot when you're brewing hot tea. Size-wise, the infuser will fit into a wide variety of cups and even a full-size teapot. This is my regular go-to teacup from my Corelware set, and you can see it fits in there pretty well. It does go all the way down to the bottom and fills the entire cup. It also fits okay into this extra large coffee cup, which I don't typically use for tea, but you would have to kind of dig it out of there, but it does fit in. I have another coffee cup with a slightly narrower top that it actually fits in better too. And then it also fits into my full-size teapot pretty well. You can see. And you can use this lid instead of the teapot lid. Let's compare that to how the other infusers fit. This infuser, this fits well into a regular teacup and has a handle for pulling it out. It also fits into the extra large cup. Again, the handle keeps it from falling down in mostly. And it also fits the teapot. Again, while it fits, it doesn't have as much space in it as the houseagain. In fact, I can fit it inside the houseagain. So you can see that the houseagain infuser is going to give your tea leaves a lot more room to move around and to be exposed to the hot water. This tea infuser is the one that I've had forever. In fact, it's the tea infuser I first bought when I became interested in using loose teas instead of tea bags. And you can see, while it has a very fine mesh and usually doesn't let much out of it, out through the bottom, it's very hard to keep clean because of the folds in the mesh and the supports that keep the mesh from getting crushed. This is a newer infuser that I bought a year or two ago when my daughter became interested in herbal teas, and I didn't want her to have to use my black tea infuser for her caffeine-free herbals. And this is a popular design. It has what was described as a super fine mesh, and you can see it has these little tiny holes. This is the houseagain infuser. And like I said before, when I took it out, oh my God, I looked like almost like it was a solid sheet. And then I looked at it more carefully, and you can see it is a mesh. There is one seam on the back here that's very small. I would imagine that's probably the only place where you're going to get tea leaves getting caught and staining. And then there are some places in the mesh where it's solid and there are no holes. That should add some stability to the infuser. So let's compare how well these three guys hold tea leaves. First up is some Tetley Black Loose Leaf Tea. I'm just going to pour a teaspoon into each infuser and then lift it up so you can see whether or not any tea came out. So here's the houseagain infuser. You can see there are some, I'm not sure if you can see this or not. I can see it. There are some little teeny tiny specks, and if I shake it, you can see a little tiny bit more comes out. Basically, some tea dust comes out. This is my old trusted and true one. I don't really see much of anything coming out of this one. I will say that it is wet right now because I just rinsed it off and dried it off the best I could. It takes forever for this mesh to dry, and so it's possible that any of the dust is clinging to the water that's still in there. In fact, yeah, you can see that there's a little bit coming out the side where it's drier. So I would say probably these two are pretty comparable in terms of how much dust they let out. And this is the other one, and you can see, wow, there's no comparison. There's a lot of tea dust coming out of this, and larger fragments coming out of this one. Next, we're going to try some red rooibos tea, and this is an herbal. I don't have very much of this left, so I'm going to be kind of sparing about it, but I did want to try it because it's a tea that we often use in my house. So let's take a look. The old standby. A tiny bit of dust coming out. Again, it's hard to see on film, but yeah, you can see it if you sort of look. There's a little tiny bits coming out. The houseagain. Again, little tiny bit, hard to see dust coming out. And the other infuser is just dropping bits of rooibos everywhere. So what about those people who want to try the loose leaf experience, but they don't have any loose leaf tea on hand, or maybe you've run out of loose leaf and you want to try out a tea bag in your infuser? Usually that doesn't work so well because tea bags are usually not whole leaf tea. They're usually powdered tea or little fragments of tea. This is a chamomile tea bag, and I'm going to dump some of this into each of these infusers and see what happens. So this is what the chamomile looks like. It's not quite as powdery as black tea in a bag would be, but it's still some pretty small bits. So I'm going to pour a little bit of that into each of these infusers, and we'll see how they do with that. There we go. Okay, so the old standby. You can see it would work. There is a little bit of powder coming out. It's probably comparable to the amount of powder that came out of this one with the loose black tea. And here's the houseagain. Barely any is coming out of there. I think part of the reason this one is performing a little worse now is that it's been sitting out here in the sun and it's finally drying more closer to being dried out. But you can see a lot of chamomiles coming out of there. And hardly any chamomiles coming out of there. Let's look at this one. Oh my gosh, it's almost like it's completely just falling through the infuser. So that would definitely be a no-go. I would have a cup full of chamomile bits. Here's another close-up look of the infuser after it's already wet. You can see it does have some give to it. It's I wouldn't call it fragile, but it's not something that I would want to be rough with. The bottom is one piece, and it's hard to see it, but it is very finely riveted there. So that's one seam, and then there's another seam on the back of the infuser. It seems to be very strong. The manufacturer does recommend hand washing it, and I would hand wash it also. I never put my tea infusers in the dishwasher. That just doesn't seem like a good idea. I'm looking forward to using this because I think it's going to be a lot easier to keep clean. It's not going to get grotty looking like this one, hopefully. And it's going to keep tea leaves out, unlike this one, which generally just makes a mess in the bottom of my cup. The other piece that this comes with is a lid. And if you look at the pictures and the listing on this for Amazon, you'll see that they also picture this as working as a saucer for the infuser. You can turn it upside down and put the infuser in it, but as you can see, that may or may not work very well. The knob is very flat, and if your surface is very flat and level, it might work completely fine, but it is wobbly. You can see I've got this on a towel because we're on my picnic table, which has been visited by birds and such. But if I put it on, let's try putting it on a saucer, which is flat. You can see it's not 100% stable. I can't see myself using this as a saucer. That, to me, that's a tiny bit of a negative. I mean, it's not a deal breaker, because that means I have to use another saucer or something to put the infuser on when I take it out of my cup. Again, not a big deal. I have saucers. It's just another plate that can go into the dishwasher when I'm done with it, so not a big deal. Okay, so I'm going to take this infuser inside and brew some tea with it and see what I think. So let's taste it. Tastes like tea. There's no metallic taste, no plasticky taste, no silicone taste. Just tastes like normal tea with milk and sugar. So I rather like this infuser. Now obviously I just want to take a look at how much water drained out after I took it out, put it on the saucer after taking it out of the cup. I think I'm probably going to switch to using this infuser over the old standby, and hopefully it will hold up for many years.